The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the cleaning robots that never seemed to do their job properly. Dae-hyun stood in the kitchen, staring at the pile of unwashed dishes from 3 days ago. His daughter Ji-woo sat at the table, eating cereal for dinner again. She was 7 years old and deserved better than this. "Dad, my teacher says we need to bring homemade cookies tomorrow," Ji-woo said, her voice small. Dae-hyun closed his eyes. He worked 12-hour shifts at the engineering facility. There was no time for cookies. There was barely time for proper meals. His sister Hee-jin had been telling him for months that he needed help, but he had been stubborn. He could handle it alone. He had to. "I'll buy some from the store," he said. Ji-woo's face fell. She didn't complain, which somehow made it worse. The next day, Hee-jin arrived at his apartment without warning. She took one look at the mess and shook her head. "This can't continue. Ji-woo needs stability. You need help." "I'm managing," Dae-hyun said. "You're drowning." Hee-jin pulled out her tablet. "I've already submitted your application to the Interspecies Domestic Services Program. They matched you with someone perfect. She arrives tomorrow." Dae-hyun wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. He was failing. Not at work, but at the thing that mattered most. Being a father. Being present. 2 years had passed since Soon-yi died in the transport accident, and he still hadn't figured out how to live without her. "An alien?" he asked. "A Velian. They're known for exceptional domestic skills. She'll cook, clean, help with Ji-woo. You can focus on work and being a dad." Hyejin squeezed his shoulder. "It's not replacing Soon-yi. It's surviving." The next evening, Dae-hyun waited nervously by the door. Ji-woo hid behind him, peeking out with curious eyes. When the doorbell rang, his heart jumped. The woman who stood in the doorway was unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was tall and slender, with smooth lavender skin that seemed to shimmer slightly under the hallway lights. Her eyes were large and amber-colored, with vertical pupils that reminded him of a cat. Her hair was long and white, pulled back in a practical braid. She wore a simple gray uniform that looked almost military in its precision. "Good evening, my name is Lyra. I have been assigned to your household." Her voice was soft but carried no warmth. It was the voice of someone reading from a script. "I'm Dae-hyun. This is my daughter Ji-woo." He stepped aside. "Please, come in." Lyra entered with careful steps, her eyes scanning the apartment with professional efficiency. She noticed everything: the dishes in the sink, the laundry piled on the couch, the dust on the shelves. Her expression never changed, but Dae-hyun felt judged anyway. Ji-woo whispered, "She's purple." "Lavender," Lyra corrected gently, looking down at the child. "And you are very observant." "Are you going to live here?" Ji-woo asked. "Yes, I will occupy the spare room and handle household duties." Lyra turned to Dae-hyun. "If you could show me the kitchen and provide a list of dietary restrictions, I will prepare this evening's meal." Everything was business, pure transaction. Dae-hyun showed her around the apartment, explaining Ji-woo's schedule, his work hours, the building's facilities. Lyra absorbed every detail without asking unnecessary questions. Within an hour, she had unpacked her minimal belongings and was already cooking in the kitchen. The smell of real food filled the apartment for the first time in months. Ji-woo emerged from her room, drawn by the aroma. Dae-hyun watched from the living room as Lyra moved through the kitchen with incredible grace. Her hands worked quickly, chopping vegetables with perfect precision. She seemed to know where everything was, even though this was her first time in the space. Dinner was ready in 40 minutes. Lyra had prepared grilled fish, seasoned rice, 3 types of vegetables, and a soup that smelled like comfort itself. She set the table, served the food, and then stepped back. "Please eat," she said. "Aren't you going to join us?" Dae-hyun asked. "I will eat after you have finished. It is proper." Lyra's tone made it clear this was not up for discussion. The food was incredible. Ji-woo actually giggled with delight at the taste. Dae-hyun couldn't remember the last time he had seen her this happy at dinner. But watching Lyra stand silently in the corner, waiting like a servant, made him uncomfortable. After dinner, Lyra cleaned the kitchen with the same efficient silence. Jiwoo went to bed without being asked, full and content. Daehyun tried to help with the dishes, but Lyra politely refused. "This is my responsibility," she said. "You're not a robot. You can accept help. I am here to provide help, not receive it." She continued washing dishes, her back to him. Daehyun gave up and went to his room. But sleep didn't come easily. He kept thinking about those amber eyes, completely devoid of emotion. What kind of life had she lived to become so detached? Over the following weeks, Lyra transformed the apartment. Everything was clean, organized, perfect. Jiwoo's lunches were healthy and creative. The laundry was always done. Daehyun came home to cooked meals every evening. It should have felt like a blessing, but instead, it felt hollow. Lyra never smiled, never complained, never asked for anything. She worked from before sunrise until late at night, always finding something to clean or organize. When Daehyun told her to rest, she would bow slightly and say, "I am not tired." One night, unable to sleep, Daehyun got up for water. He found Lyra in the living room at 2 in the morning, polishing picture frames. She was holding a photograph of Soon-yi, Daehyun, and baby Jiwoo at the beach. Her expression was still neutral, but her fingers traced the glass gently. "You should be sleeping," Daehyun said. Lyra nearly dropped the frame. She set it down quickly. "I apologize. I did not mean to handle your personal belongings." "It's fine, but seriously, you need rest." "I rest adequately." She moved to leave, but Daehyun blocked her path. "Why are you really here, Lyra? On Earth, I mean. Why take this job?" For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret. But it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. "It is a good position. Your family is kind. I am fortunate." The script again. "That's not what I asked." Lyra looked at the floor. "It is late. You should sleep, Daehyun. You have work tomorrow." She left before he could press further. Daehyun stood alone in the living room, holding the picture frame she had been cleaning. Something was very wrong here. Lyra wasn't just efficient or professional. She was hiding something deep and painful behind that careful mask. He made a decision then. He would find out what it was. Not because she was his employee, but because despite everything, despite the distance she maintained, he was beginning to care about the quiet alien woman who had entered their lives. 3 months had passed since Lyra arrived, and the apartment had never been more perfect. Everything ran like a well-maintained machine. Jiwoo's grades improved. Daehyun gained back the weight he had lost after Soon-yi's death. On paper, the arrangement was exactly what they needed. But Daehyun felt more alone than ever. Lyra remained distant despite living under the same roof. She performed her duties flawlessly, but refused every attempt at real conversation. She never watched television with them, never laughed at Jiwoo's jokes, never shared anything about herself beyond basic pleasantries. Jiwoo, however, was determined to break through. Children had a way of ignoring social barriers that adults built. "Lyra, do you have a family?" Jiwoo asked one afternoon while Lyra helped her with homework. "I did," Lyra said simply. "Where are they?" "On Velia, my home planet." "Do you miss them?" Lyra's hand paused over the homework sheet. "Yes. Why don't you call them? Dad says we can call anywhere in the galaxy now." "It is complicated." Lyra's voice was quieter than usual. "Do they miss you too?" This time, Lyra didn't answer. She stood abruptly. "You should finish this page before dinner. I need to check the laundry." She left the room quickly. Jiwoo looked confused. Daehyun, who had been listening from the kitchen, felt his chest tighten. There was real pain there, buried beneath all that professional distance. That evening, after Jiwoo was asleep, Daehyun found Lyra in the living room. She was watching something on the television with the volume low. He approached quietly and saw it was an old Earth movie, a romance about a couple overcoming obstacles to be together. Tears were streaming down Lyra's lavender cheeks. She didn't notice him at first. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, watching the couple embrace. Her hand was pressed against her chest as if it hurt. When she finally saw Daehyun standing there, she jumped up and quickly wiped her face. "I apologize. I should not be using the entertainment system without permission. I will return to my room. Lyra, wait. Dae-hyun stepped closer. Are you okay? I am fine. I was simply wasting your resources. It will not happen again. That's not what I mean. You're crying. It is nothing. The film was foolish. I should not have watched it. She moved to leave, but her hands were shaking. Please, just talk to me, not as your employer, as someone who lives here with you. Lyra stopped. Her back was to him. I cannot. Why not? Because it is not proper. Because I am here to serve, not to burden you with my problems. You're a person, Lyra, not a robot. People have problems. People cry. She turned around slowly. Her amber eyes were red from crying. You do not understand what I am, what my position means. Then help me understand. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she shook her head. Good night, Dae-hyun. This time he let her go. But he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. That raw emotion. That pain. The next day, Hyejin came to visit. She immediately noticed something was wrong. You look troubled. Dae-hyun told her about what he had witnessed, about how Lyra never seemed happy despite doing everything perfectly, about the tears. Hyejin frowned. Have you actually researched Velian culture? No. Should I? Maybe you should. She pulled out her tablet and started searching. What she found made Dae-hyun's blood run cold. Velians were an advanced species with rich artistic traditions. They were poets, musicians, teachers. But 300 years ago, their world was conquered by a coalition of aggressive species. The war destroyed their economy and infrastructure. Now, millions of Velians worked in service positions across the galaxy, bound by contracts they couldn't escape. The Interspecies Domestic Services Program wasn't a helpful employment agency. It was dressed-up indentured servitude. These contracts are usually 10 years, Hyejin read aloud. Workers receive room, board, and minimal pay. But the conditions are strict. No romantic relationships, no refusing duties, no early termination without massive penalties. That's slavery, Dae-hyun said, his voice hard. Legally, it's not. They sign willingly. But when your planet is economically destroyed and your family is starving, how much choice do you really have? Dae-hyun thought about Lyra standing in the corner during meals. Never accepting help, never asking for anything, always maintaining that professional distance. It wasn't just politeness, it was survival. How much time does she have left on her contract? Hyejin checked the documents. 7 years. 7 more years of this existence. 7 more years of being treated like furniture. The thought made him sick. That evening, Dae-hyun made a decision. When Lyra served dinner, he said, "Sit down and eat with us. I will eat after." "No, sit with us, please." Lyra looked uncomfortable. "It is not appropriate." "I'm not asking as your employer. I'm asking as someone who shares this home with you. In my house, everyone eats together. That's the rule." Ji-woo nodded enthusiastically. "Please, Lyra, it's weird when you just stand there." Lyra hesitated. Then, slowly, she pulled out a chair and sat down. She held her chopsticks awkwardly, as if she had forgotten how to eat normally. The meal was silent at first. But then Ji-woo started talking about her day at school. She made Lyra laugh. Actually laugh. It was a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it was real. Over the following weeks, Dae-hyun insisted on the new arrangement. Lyra ate with them every evening. At first, she barely spoke, but gradually, she began to share small things. She talked about Velia's twin moons, about the singing flowers that bloomed in summer, about the poetry competitions she had once participated in. "You were a poet?" Dae-hyun asked, surprised. "I was a teacher, literature and arts." Lyra's eyes grew distant. "Before the war, I taught children like Ji-woo." "What happened?" Lyra was quiet for a long time. "The war destroyed everything. My school was bombed. My savings became worthless. My family needed food. This contract provided enough money to support them for 10 years. So you sacrificed yourself for them. It is not sacrifice, it is responsibility. But her voice cracked on the last word. That night, Jiwoo developed a high fever. It came on suddenly, and within hours, she was burning up. Dae-hyun called the medical service, but they couldn't come until morning. He paced frantically while Lyra stayed by Jiwoo's bedside with cool cloths and water. For 3 days, the fever raged. Dae-hyun had to work, but Lyra never left Jiwoo's side. She sang Velian lullabies in her strange, beautiful language. She held Jiwoo's hand through the worst of it. She barely slept. When the fever finally broke, Jiwoo opened her eyes and saw Lyra sitting there, exhausted but smiling. "You stayed with me," Jiwoo whispered. "Of course I did." "Like a mom would." Lyra's face crumpled. She pulled Jiwoo into a gentle hug, and tears fell freely. "You are a precious child. So precious." Jiwoo hugged her back. "You're part of our family now, right?" Lyra couldn't speak. She just nodded, crying harder than Dae-hyun had ever seen anyone cry. All the walls she had built came crashing down in that moment. She wasn't the efficient housekeeper anymore. She was just a person who had been desperately lonely, finally feeling connected to someone again. Dae-hyun stood in the doorway, watching. Something shifted in his chest. This wasn't about contracts or employment anymore. This was about family. About caring for someone who had given up everything to survive. He made a silent promise then. He would find a way to help her, whatever it took. After Jiwoo recovered, something changed in the apartment. The walls between them became thinner. Lyra still performed her duties, but now she smiled occasionally. She told stories during dinner. She even laughed at Dae-hyun's terrible jokes. But she still disappeared into her room every night, still maintained a careful distance. Old habits died hard. One evening, Dae-hyun knocked on her door. "Can we talk?" Lyra opened the door, concern on her face. "Is something wrong? Did I forget a task?" "No, nothing like that. I just wanted to talk. Really talk." She let him in hesitantly. Her room was spotless and bare. She owned almost nothing, just the gray uniform, one change of clothes, and a small datapad. No decorations, no personal items. It looked like a prison cell. "You don't have to live like this," Dae-hyun said gently. "Like what?" "Like you don't exist. Like you're not allowed to have things or want things." He sat on the edge of her bed. "Tell me about Velia, the real Velia, not just the pretty parts." Lyra sat across from him in the only chair. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. "Velia was beautiful once. We had cities made of crystal that caught the sunlight. We had gardens that sang in the wind. We were artists, philosophers, teachers. We believed in peace above all else." Her voice grew heavy. "That made us weak when the war came. We had no real military, no weapons. We thought diplomacy would save us. It did not. The coalition conquered us in 6 months. They took our resources, destroyed our economy, and left us dependent on them. Now millions of my people work across the galaxy, sending money home so our families can survive." "That's horrible," Dae-hyun said. "It is reality." Lyra's amber eyes met his. "I chose this position because I heard humans were different, that you valued compassion and individual rights. I wanted to see if that was true or just propaganda." "And what have you found?" She smiled sadly. "You are kind, Dae-hyun. You and Jiwoo both. But kindness does not change the system. I still have 7 years left on my contract. 7 years of being helpful and grateful and invisible. What if you didn't have to be invisible here? What if you could just be yourself?" I do not remember who that is anymore. The admission hung in the air between them. Dae-hyun reached out and took her hand. She flinched at first, then relaxed. Her skin was warm, despite its alien color. "I lost my wife 2 years ago," he said quietly. "A transport accident. One day she was here, the next she was gone. For months, I didn't know how to exist. I just went through the motions, pretending to be alive. I am sorry for your loss. The point is, I understand hiding. I understand building walls so you don't have to feel the pain. But Jiwoo brought me back. She needed me to be present, not just functional. He squeezed her hand gently. Maybe you could try being present too. Here, with us. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I want to, but I am afraid. Of what? Of wanting things I cannot have. Of forgetting my place. Of getting hurt when this ends. What if it doesn't have to end? She pulled her hand away and stood up. Please do not say such things. You are my employer. This is a temporary arrangement. In 7 years, I will be reassigned. That is how it works. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. Her voice cracked. You do not understand. My contract forbids personal relationships. If the agency thinks I have become too attached, they will move me immediately. I cannot risk that. My family depends on this income. Dae-hyun stood too. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. Lyra wiped her eyes. I should not have shouted. That was improper. Stop that. Stop being proper all the time. You're allowed to have feelings. Feelings are dangerous. Feelings are what make us alive. They stared at each other. The air felt heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Lyra spoke softly. I should sleep. Good night, Dae-hyun. He left, but the conversation stayed with him. He couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. That she wanted things she couldn't have. What things? Freedom? Family? Something else? The following week, Dae-hyun's colleague Tae-sung came over for dinner. It was supposed to be a casual visit, but it went wrong quickly. Tae-sung made dismissive comments about the food, saying it was exotic alien cooking. He snapped his fingers at Lyra to bring more water. He treated her like she was furniture. Dae-hyun felt his temper rising. Her name is Lyra. What? Her name is Lyra, not the help or the alien. Show some respect? Tae-sung laughed. Since when do you care? She's hired help. That's literally her job. She's a person, a skilled teacher who was forced into this position by circumstances beyond her control. She deserves basic human decency. Human decency for a non-human? That's rich. Dae-hyun stood up. Get out. What? You heard me. Get out of my house. Tae-sung left, muttering about Dae-hyun losing his mind. But Dae-hyun didn't care. He found Lyra in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she washed dishes. Thank you, she whispered. You don't need to thank me for basic respect. No one has ever defended me before, not since I left Velia. She turned to face him. Why do you care so much? It was a fair question. When had this happened? When had the efficient alien housekeeper become someone he cared about deeply? Someone whose sadness made his chest hurt? Someone whose rare smiles made his day brighter? Because you matter, he said simply. You're not just someone who works here. You're part of this family. Ji-woo adores you, and I… He stopped, unsure how to finish. And you what? I care about you. Not as an employer. As a person. Lyra's breath caught. You should not say such things. Why not? It's true. Because it makes everything harder. Tears spilled down her cheeks again. Because I care about you too, about both of you. This place feels more like home than anywhere I have been in years, and that terrifies me because it cannot last. Dae-hyun closed the distance between them. He gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. What if we fight to make it last? Fight who? The system? The contract? Whatever we have to. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. You do not know what you are saying. The consequences could be severe. I don't care. You should. But she didn't pull away. They stood like that for a long moment, neither willing to break the connection. Finally, Lyra stepped back. I need to think, she said. This is all happening too fast. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That night, Lyra didn't retreat to her room immediately after dinner. She sat with them while Ji-woo played. She even accepted Dae-hyun's offer to watch a movie together. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, careful not to touch. But it felt intimate anyway. Ji-woo fell asleep between them halfway through the film. Dae-hyun carried her to bed, and when he returned, Lyra was still there. I have not felt this content in years, she admitted quietly. It scares me how much I want this to be real. It is real. For now. But reality has a way of crushing hope. Then let's be stubborn. Let's refuse to let reality win. He sat beside her. Humans are good at that. Being stubborn about impossible things. Lyra laughed softly. I am beginning to see that. They talked until late into the night. About everything and nothing. About Sun-Yi and how much Dae-hyun still missed her. About Lyra's family back on Velia, and whether they would approve of her growing attachment to this human family. About Ji-woo's future and what kind of world they wanted to build for her. When Lyra finally went to bed, something fundamental had shifted between them. They both felt it. The professional distance was gone completely now. What remained was something fragile and precious and worth protecting. Dae-hyun couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office at 3 in the morning, scrolling through legal documents about Velian service contracts. The more he read, the angrier he became. The contracts were designed to be unbreakable. 10 years of service. No early termination without paying massive penalties that amounted to triple the remaining salary. No personal relationships with employers, classified as unprofessional conduct, that could result in immediate reassignment. No legal recourse for workers who felt mistreated. It was exploitation dressed up in legal language. His sister Hye-jin had sent him contact information for 3 lawyers who specialized in interspecies labor law. He had already messaged all of them, but deep down, he knew this wouldn't be easy. The system had been in place for decades. Powerful corporations made billions from these contracts. What chance did one engineer have against that? But he had to try, because somewhere between hiring Lyra and now, she had stopped being a stranger. She had become essential. Not because she cooked and cleaned, but because she laughed at dinner. Because she helped Ji-woo with homework with infinite patience. Because when Dae-hyun came home stressed from work, she somehow knew exactly what to say. Because he had fallen in love with her. The realization hit him like a transport at full speed. Love. Not gratitude or sympathy or friendship. Love. Real, terrifying, complicated love. He was in love with an alien woman who legally couldn't love him back. The next morning, Lyra noticed something was wrong. You look exhausted. Couldn't sleep. Is work troubling you? Something like that. He wanted to tell her. Wanted to say everything he had been feeling. But the fear of making things worse kept him silent. That evening, after Ji-woo was in bed, Dae-hyun found Lyra on the balcony. She was looking up at the stars, her expression distant. Do you miss Velia? He asked, joining her. Every day, but it is complicated. I miss what it was, not what it has become. Tell me about your family. My mother was a painter. My father taught philosophy. I have 2 younger brothers who now work in manufacturing on colony worlds. She smiled sadly. We video call once a month. They always ask when I'm coming home. What do you tell them? That I am saving money, that I am learning about human culture, that I am fine. She looked at him. I never tell them the truth. Which is? That I am lonely. That I feel more like property than a person most days. That I dream about a life I will never have. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That I have started to care too much about the wrong people. Dae-hyun's heart raced. What if they're not the wrong people? Then I am in serious trouble. He took her hand. This time she didn't pull away. I've been researching your contract. Lyra tensed. Why? Because I want to help you. I want to find a way out of this for you. There is no way out. The penalties are too severe. I would owe more money than I could earn in a lifetime. What if someone else paid the penalties? Dae-hyun, no, I could never ask that of you. You're not asking, I'm offering. Lyra pulled her hand away, her eyes wide. Do you know how much money that would be? It would destroy your savings. Ji-woo's education fund. Everything. I don't care. Well, I do. She stood abruptly. You have already given me more than you should. Treating me like family, defending me to your friends. I will not let you ruin yourself financially for me. It's my choice to make. No, it is not. Because it affects Jiwoo. Your responsibility is to her first. Always. Lyra's voice shook. I appreciate what you are trying to do. But the answer is no. She went inside before he could argue further. Dae-hyun stayed on the balcony, frustrated and helpless. She was right about Jiwoo. He couldn't spend everything on this, but he also couldn't stand by and do nothing. 2 weeks later, the decision was taken out of their hands. An inspector from the Interspecies Domestic Services Agency arrived unannounced. Her name was Keiko, a stern woman with a clipboard and no sense of humor. She walked through the apartment, taking notes on everything. Where does the worker sleep? She asked. In the spare bedroom, Dae-hyun answered, trying to stay calm. I need to inspect it. Lyra's room was as bare as always, but Keiko still found problems. The worker should have been provided with proper furnishings, a desk, personal storage, entertainment access. She has access to everything in the apartment, Dae-hyun said. That is not the same as designated personal space. Keiko made more notes. Does the worker eat separately from the family? Dae-hyun hesitated. No, she eats with us. That is inappropriate. Workers should maintain professional boundaries. She's part of the family. Keiko looked up sharply. Excuse me? I said she's part of the family. We eat together, we talk, we care about each other. That is exactly the problem. Keiko's expression hardened. I am noting signs of inappropriate attachment on both sides. This violates the contract terms. Lyra stepped forward, her face pale. There is no inappropriate behavior. Dae-hyun and his daughter treat me with respect. Nothing more. The contract clearly states that workers must maintain professional distance. Eating with the family, personal conversations, emotional attachment, these all qualify as violations. That's ridiculous, Dae-hyun said. She's a person, not a robot. You can't legislate against basic human decency. The worker is not human. And the contract she signed specifies acceptable behavior. I am recommending immediate reassignment to prevent further attachment. No! Jiwoo's voice rang out. She had been listening from her bedroom. She ran out, tears streaming down her face. You can't take Lyra away. This is not a discussion, child. She's my family. She takes care of me. She loves me. Jiwoo grabbed Lyra's hand. Please don't let them take you. Lyra knelt down and hugged Jiwoo tightly, her own tears falling. I am so sorry, little one. I am so sorry. Keiko watched coldly. The reassignment will occur within 1 week. Please ensure the worker is prepared to transfer. After she left, the apartment felt like a tomb. Jiwoo cried in Lyra's arms. Dae-hyun paced like a caged animal, his mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. That night, after Jiwoo finally cried herself to sleep, Lyra and Dae-hyun sat in the living room in silence. I am sorry, Lyra said. I should have maintained better boundaries. This is my fault. Don't you dare apologize for caring about us. Caring was the mistake. I knew better. I knew the rules. The rules are wrong. Dae-hyun stood up, his frustration boiling over. You're not property. You're not a servant. You're a person who deserves to choose her own life. But I cannot choose. That is the reality of my situation. Then we'll change reality. How? You tried researching the contract. There is no legal way out. Dae-hyun ran his hands through his hair. His mind was working frantically. There had to be something, some loophole, some exception. Then it hit him. Marriage, he said. Lyra stared at him. What? There are cultural clauses in international law. Certain traditions are protected. Marriage is one of them. If we got married, the contract would be nullified. That is insane. It's the only option. Dae-hyun, you cannot marry me just to break a contract. Marriage is supposed to mean something. It does mean something. He knelt in front of her, taking both her hands. I love you, Lyra. I'm in love with you. I think I have been for months, but I was too afraid to admit it. Lyra's breath caught. You cannot mean that. I do. I love how patient you are with Jiwoo. I love your quiet strength. I love the way you hum when you cook. I love your stories about Velia. I love that you cry at romantic movies. He squeezed her hands. I want you to stay, not as a housekeeper, as my wife, as Jiwoo's mother, as part of this family forever. Tears streamed down Lyra's face. I love you too. I have tried so hard not to, but I cannot help it. You and Jiwoo are everything to me. Then marry me, please. If we do this, it will cause problems. The agency will fight it. There will be legal battles. Let them fight. Humans are good at fighting for the people we love. Lyra laughed through her tears. You are all stubborn fools. Is that a yes? She pulled him close and kissed him. It was soft and desperate and full of hope. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Yes, I will marry you. The news spread faster than Dae-hyun expected. By the next morning, his announcement that he was marrying Lyra had become a major story across Earth's networks. Engineer challenges service contract through marriage. The headlines varied, but the theme was consistent. Human man fights system to save alien woman he loves. The public response was split. Some humans celebrated the story as romantic. Others called it exploitation of legal loopholes. Alien species had mixed reactions too. Some admired humans for prioritizing love over rules. Others saw it as typical human chaos disrupting established order. Heejin arrived at the apartment with legal documents and a worried expression. Do you understand what you're doing? The agency is threatening lawsuits. They're claiming you manipulated Lyra into this. I didn't manipulate anyone, Dae-hyun said firmly. We're in love. That's the whole truth. Lyra nodded. I choose this freely. For the first time in years, I am making my own choice. Heejin looked at them both and sighed. Okay, then we fight. I've contacted a human rights lawyer named Ms. Park who specializes in cases like this. She thinks we have a chance if we can prove the marriage is genuine. It is genuine, Dae-hyun said. I know, but we need to demonstrate that to the court. The legal battle began immediately. The Interspecies Domestic Services Agency filed an injunction to stop the marriage, claiming it was a fraudulent attempt to break a legal contract. They argued that Lyra was being coerced, that she couldn't make free decisions while employed, that the whole situation was a publicity stunt. Ms. Park countered with cultural protection laws. Marriage was recognized across most of the galaxy as sacred. Many species had traditions protecting spouses from contract labor. If Lyra married Dae-hyun, she would gain legal protections that superseded her service contract. The case went viral across human and alien networks. Media from dozens of planets covered it. Some reporters portrayed Dae-hyun as a hero fighting injustice. Others painted him as a troublemaker trying to destroy an important economic system. Through it all, Dae-hyun and Lyra stayed focused on what mattered. They planned a simple ceremony. They explained everything to Jiwoo, who was thrilled at the idea of Lyra officially becoming her mother. Does this mean you'll never leave? Jiwoo asked Lyra one evening. If the court allows it, I will stay with you forever, Lyra promised. Good, because you're already my mom in my heart. Lyra held her close, crying happy tears for once. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after the engagement. Dae-hyun and Lyra arrived with Ms. Park facing a panel of 3 judges, 1 human, 1 Velian, and 1 from a neutral species. The agency's lawyer was aggressive. This marriage is clearly a scheme to circumvent legal obligations. The worker has 7 years remaining on her contract. Allowing this would set a dangerous precedent. Ms. Park stood up. Marriage is not a crime. 2 people falling in love is not fraud. My clients are prepared to demonstrate the genuine nature of their relationship. The Velian judge, an older woman named Elder Sora, spoke. I would like to hear from Lyra directly, in our language. Lyra stood and began speaking in Velian. The musical, flowing language filled the courtroom. She spoke for several minutes while Dae-hyun held his breath, not understanding the words but trusting her completely. When she finished, Elder Sora had tears in her eyes. She switched to common language. She spoke of loneliness, of losing herself in service, of finding unexpected kindness in a human family. of love that grew slowly and genuinely. She spoke poetry that we thought our people had forgotten. The human judge asked, Daehyun, why are you doing this? You could hire another housekeeper easily. Because I don't want a housekeeper. I want Lyra. She's the kindest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever met. She makes my daughter laugh. She makes our house a home. I love her, and I want to spend my life with her. And if you lose this case, then I'll appeal. And if that fails, I'll find another way. Humans are stubborn about protecting the people we love. The third judge, a reptilian being, hissed thoughtfully. The contract system has existed for many years without challenge. Why should we change it now? Ms. Park answered. Because it's wrong. Because sentient beings should not be treated as property, no matter how politely we phrase it. My client wants to marry the woman he loves. That should not be controversial. That should be celebrated. The deliberation took 3 days. 3 days of waiting, of hoping, of preparing for the worst. Daehyun barely slept. Lyra tried to maintain composure but kept breaking into tears when she thought no one was looking. On the third day, they returned to court. Elder Sora delivered the verdict. We have reviewed the evidence and testimony extensively. We find that the marriage between Daehyun and Lyra is genuine. Furthermore, we find that the contract system, while technically legal, violates the spirit of interspecies cooperation that the galactic community claims to value. The agency lawyer started to object, but Elder Sora held up her hand. We are ruling in favor of the petitioners. The marriage will be recognized. The service contract will be nullified with no penalties. Additionally, we are recommending a full review of the Interspecies Domestic Services Program for potential labor law violations. The courtroom erupted. News drones buzzed with excitement. The agency representatives looked furious. Heejin hugged Ms. Park. Ji-woo, watching from the gallery, screamed with joy. Daehyun turned to Lyra. She was crying again, but this time with pure relief and happiness. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her in front of everyone. We won, he whispered. You won, she corrected. You fought for me. No one has ever fought for me before. I'll fight for you every day for the rest of my life. The wedding was small and perfect. They held it in the apartment's rooftop garden with only close family and friends attending. Lyra wore a dress that combined traditional Velian and Korean elements, flowing lavender fabric with intricate embroidery. Ji-woo served as flower girl, beaming with pride. Heejin officiated the ceremony. They exchanged vows in both Korean and Velian, promising to love and support each other across all cultural and species boundaries. When Daehyun kissed his bride, the small gathering erupted in applause. Somewhere in the crowd, someone started playing Velian wedding music. Lyra laughed with pure joy, a sound Daehyun had once thought he would never hear. The victory rippled outward. Other families with alien domestic workers began questioning their contracts. Human rights organizations filed class action lawsuits. Several alien species with similar labor practices started internal reforms. The case became known as the Love Revolution, proof that individual acts of courage could challenge entire systems. 6 months after the wedding, life had settled into a new normal. Lyra had taken a position teaching Velian language and culture at a local university. Students loved her classes, which combined academic rigor with personal storytelling. She also became an activist, working with organizations to reform contract labor across the galaxy. She spoke at conferences, gave interviews, and helped other Velian workers find paths to freedom. Daehyun watched her transform from the quiet, frightened woman who had arrived at his door to someone confident and powerful. She was exactly who she was meant to be. One evening, the family gathered in their garden for Ji-woo's 8th birthday. They had invited friends from school, Hyejin, and even some of Lyra's Velian colleagues who worked on Earth. Ji-woo blew out her candles and made a wish. When asked what she wished for, she smiled and said, I wished we could visit Velia someday, as a family. Lyra's eyes widened. She looked at Daehyun. I've been saving up, he admitted. I thought maybe next year we could take a trip. Meet your family. See the singing flowers. Lyra's hand went to her mouth. You would do that? Of course. They're family now, too. She threw her arms around him, crying happy tears again. She seemed to do that a lot these days. Happy tears instead of sad ones. Later that night, after Ji-woo was asleep and the guests had gone home, Daehyun and Lyra sat on their balcony looking at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyra asked quietly. "All the trouble, the legal fights, the media attention?" "Not for a second. Do you?" "Never. I have everything I ever wanted. A family, freedom, purpose, love." She leaned against him. "You know what's funny? When I first came to Earth, I was so broken. I thought I would just serve my time and go home. I never imagined I could be this happy." "You deserve happiness? So do you. We both lost so much. Me, my freedom, you Sunyi. But somehow we found each other." Daehyun kissed her forehead. "I think Sunyi would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could challenge me and make me laugh. I hope I do both." "You do. Every day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere up there was Velia, with its twin moons and singing flowers. Someday soon, they would visit as a family. But tonight, they were exactly where they belonged. Together. Lyra had arrived as an alien housekeeper, bound by contracts and stripped of identity. She had wanted nothing more than to be seen, to be valued, to be loved like a wife. Now she was all those things and more. She was a teacher, an activist, a mother, a wife. She was free. And it had all started because one stubborn human refused to accept that the system was more important than the person in front of him. Love, it turned out, was the most revolutionary force in the galaxy. It broke chains, challenged laws, and transformed lives. It saw people as people, regardless of species or status. That was humanity's true strength. Not weapons or technology, but the fierce, stubborn belief that every sentient being deserved dignity, choice, and love. And sometimes, one family choosing love could change an entire galaxy